Welcome back to another episode of Playing Voodoo. I'm your host Derek, and today I'll be recapping Australian Survivor Heroes vs. Villains, episode 19. Let's get straight to it. Wow. You have to give George his flowers. He's playing one of the best games we've ever seen. He might be the greatest Survivor player ever. And yes, that's including US Survivor. I'm at a loss for words. Honestly. Every single episode, he just keeps putting on a masterclass on how to strategically move about this game. And we saw this episode. I thought there was no chance that he was going to work with Liz or Nina moving forward. Yet, those two were pivotal in sending Queen Hayley home. Yes, Queen Hayley has been voted out of Australian Survivor. I had her as my winner pick. I really did. I thought she was going to get George out. I thought Nina and Liz would be upset at George for the things he's done this season, like blindsiding Shawnee, Liz's BFF and closest ally, or like Nina leading into this episode, throwing her name out there under the bus, pretty much saying that she was a liar, that she didn't vote out Sean. Yeah, it's George is amazing. There's no two ways about it. He's made this season what it is. He really has. I know there's been some debates on Twitter with for Australian Survivor whether or not George is a fan favorite. He doesn't seem to be that popular amongst the Twitter crowd. I don't understand why, to be honest, because like I've reiterated several times, he's putting on a masterclass on how to maneuver strategically in Survivor, and not only that, but socially in Survivor. And it's just wild to see. It really is. I'm sorry. I did not really anticipate this episode going the way that it did, but it did. So let's talk about what went down this episode and how it led to Hayley's blindside. So we see early on in the episode, they get back from camp. George is still pretty adamant that Nina was the one that flipped her vote to Sean to save Simon, or rather to send Sean home, rather than the plan, which was Simon for that vote. And yeah, it's quite the back and forth between George and Nina. Hayley and everyone else is just sitting there watching it go down. We see Nina pull Hayley aside. Nina confronts Hayley and pretty much tells her, hey, I know you voted to send Sean home. And essentially, Nina did not like that Hayley would not own up to it to George. Kind of just threw Nina under the bus, as Nina referenced several times during this episode. So Nina uses it as leverage to get out Hayley. Yes, she goes to George and tells George she did not do it. She did not vote out Sean. But that she was told that George won a $60,000 reward via Set for Life from the auction. And that gets George's alarm bells ringing. Who told him? Who told Nina? Who told Nina that information? Only a few people would know it. One, Liz, who was on the trip to George for the Set for Life auction. So she was obviously knew that firsthand. And secondhand, who knew that information was Hayley. Yes, early on in the season, we see George tell Hayley that he won $60,000, kind of to pull her in to ensure that they're set to go to the final two together. That we saw that tactic, I guess, used. I don't recall how long ago now. It might have been like 4 episodes ago or so, give or take. And yeah, it turns out that information is key in this game. The more information you know, you can use it to leverage it against someone else. We saw in episode 18, Hayley attempt to leverage that information against George by telling all of Simon, Nina, and Matt at the reward challenge. And then subsequently, we see this episode. Nina uses that information and leverages it against Hayley to ensure that George has his sights set on Hayley. It's bold, and it was very effective. Props to Nina. She made a great move on her part to ensure her survival in this game, and now she has a real path to the end. Yes, Nina has a path to the end because the reward challenge. Yes, it's a fun little challenge they had. The win, knocking down all of the pieces for just about everybody. Liz wins a spa day and an overnight stay. She chooses George, reasoning being to mend the fences for what happened, need some resolution, chat through what happened with the Shawnee vote. Additionally, she chooses Nina. Her reasoning being she didn't want Nina to look for an idol. Very smart. Both reasons make sense. Can't deny it. And also smart on her part because she knows Jerry and Matt are very tight with George. So that leaves no wiggle room for either Hayley or Simon to try to usurp the power and make a move against George. Yeah, it is wild to see. But we get the Jacuzzi 3. Yes, everything is laid out at this getaway. They even rehearse the action plan for when they get back to camp of how they're going to address it for Hayley. And it works beautifully. Hayley does not see it coming. It's a blindside of the ages, to say the least. And the Jacuzzi 3 is a possible final 3 now. And we are at a point with 6 people left, with George having a possible final 3 with Jerry and Matt, or George having a possible final 3 with Liz and Nina. And on the outside looking in is Simon, who has now won 3 individual immunities. Yes, Simon is the biggest challenge threat I've seen in Survivor. It seems like any challenge they're throwing his way, he's always, most of the time, he's winning these challenges, or he's threatening and possibly one of the top 2, if not top 3 in these challenges. It's just amazing to see what Simon's been doing. Again, he tried to take out King George, yet those plans were foiled as the king took out the queen. Wow. Woo! So that's kind of the recap of what happened this episode. I mean, other things to note. Simon dumping the food, dumping the rice, eating the papaya. Pretty funny. Now we're seeing Simon. He has nothing to lose. He's acting like the villain he was casted as, and I love it. You love to see it. I wish it was more of a thing this episode with someone making note that the food was missing, papaya missing, than just Hayley casually mentioning it. But yeah, quite funny nonetheless. And then also, something to keep note of moving forward, Matt. So Matt is aware that George won $60,000 from the Set for Life via the auction. And now George is aware that Matt knows that. But Matt did not tell George that. No, he did not. But you know who did? Nina. I think this buys Nina more stock moving forward with George than Matt. And yeah, Matt's days might be numbered. We will see. But with that, I want to get into my power rankings. Yes, these power rankings will serve as a guide for who I think will win. 1 being most likely to win, and now 6 remaining, 6 being least likely to win. I want to preface this with saying I have not been truthful or following my guidelines to these rankings. So the original thought was ranking them based on who I thought would win. And like I've just stated, I've not followed that. Rather, I've pretty much been trying to predict the boot order, which is quite different. So for the most part, George has been middle of the pack, if not at the end of these rankings more recently. And that's just being dishonest to the rankings itself if the rankings are intended to be a power ranking for who has the best chance to win. So with that, I will be resetting my power rankings this episode to who I think has the best chance to win. And with that in mind, at number 6, it has to be Matt. Yes, I just mentioned Matt is now, George is questioning Matt's loyalty if he's not going to tell him that information that Hayley told him on the reward trip in episode 18. I just don't see the path forward for Matt. He's kind of just hid behind George's coattails. He did flip on the heroes initially, come the merge, but do the heroes really respect it? The heroes on the jury, rather. That being like Flick, Sam, Sean, hell, even Shawnee. Do they respect what Matt has done to date? I'm not sure they do, to be honest. He might not have many friends on the jury. You need friends on the jury. You need someone campaigning for you to win at the end. I don't think Matt has that. His blind loyalty to George it's gonna cost him. It really is, and he should have been more willing to make a move against George than he realizes. So Matt, you're number 6. At number 5, I've been putting this person quite high, but that was more so for the boot order, like I previously stated. But at number 5, it has to be Jerry. Jerry, as well, I don't think has any chance of winning this game. So these two players, I just don't think have any chance. Again, he's been very loyal to George. More so, I think his loyalty is justified as we know the original Heroes Tribe turned on Jerry by voting him out and sending him to the villain's beach early on this season. So yeah, he's going to take out Sam. He's going to take out Flick. He's going to take out Sean because they turned on him. They did the exact same thing to him. So yeah, his reasoning for his votes are justified. And I think he's made a smart move playing with George. George has been controlling almost every single vote other than episode 18 from what we've seen. But at the end of the day, I don't know how much credit is being given to Jerry for these moves. And personally, I think one of the other 4 players just have better resumes at the end of the day for how I can see it playing out moving forward. So, Jerry, you're number 5. At number 4, this is tough. I think I want to put Liz at 4. So Liz has been quite high on my boot orders. I did think she was going to get far. And again, yeah, she's working with George, surprisingly. Because episode 18, we got this long confessional with her seeming... It looks like she was distraught about what happened with Shawnee and she was going to seek vengeance. And now it doesn't look like that's going to happen, to be honest. It's quite the turn from what I expected, what I anticipated. And yeah, I think that she has a really good chance to get to the end now, in my estimation, being that I do think George actually wants to move forward with both Nina and Liz to a final 3. Maybe Jerry in there as well, but not Matt. So yeah, Liz has a very good chance, and we've seen her in endurance comp. She's very good at these competitions. She won the reward challenge today. So yeah, she has a very good chance. We'll see what they do. We'll see what she does. So Liz, you're number 4. At number 3, this is where I'm going to put Nina. Actually, I'm thinking about this. I'm going to put Simon at number 3. So Simon has won 3 individual immunities, yet for the most part since the merge, he's voted wrong. The only times he's voted correctly was when he was working with George for those early votes, that being like David and that being Sam. Since then, Simon has not voted correctly. He's a lost puppy, as everyone's been saying on the show and on Twitter. But he's a lovable lost puppy, and he could very well win his way to the end. It would be incredible to see. At the same time, He's got to take out King George if he wants that chance to win. He has. I mean, most everyone has to take out King George. I should preface with saying if they want to win, you have to slay the king. He said, like in his confessional again, I don't know how many times at this point he said King Slayer when he writes George's name down, but time and time again, every single time, George does not go home. George does not go home. No, he does not. But Simon, we will see. The preview makes it look like you might have some others working with you this episode, that being like Nina and Matt. To be honest, I just don't see it. If anything, I think either Simon goes next episode and or Matt. So I don't think it's George, to be honest, at this point. But yeah, Simon, you've had a lot of airtime this season. We've been through the cookie idol, all that mess. George kind of embarrassing you at early on in the season at the tribal council that sent Fraser home. Like I said, the cookie idol debacle with the super villains tribe, with the heroes not wanting to work with you after the fact. It's been a roller coaster. It's been a lot of ups and downs, mostly downs, very few ups, but it's been fun nonetheless. But for that, Simon, you are number 3. At number 2, now this is where I'll put Nina for her chances to win. I think she has the second best chances moving forward. She has bonds pretty much with most of the castaways remaining. So we've seen her working with George for quite a while now. It's been under the radar, to say the least, but George has looped her in on what's happening, that she's not going home, stuff like that. And this episode, it all came to fruition with her being a catalyst in sending Queen Hayley home. Yes, Nina and Liz were as much of a part as this blind side of Hayley as George was. You have to give them their flowers as well for this blind side. And Nina has a close relationship with Liz. Yes, that's dating back to the supervillains tribe, in which they originally tried to blindside Queen Hayley. This time, it comes through, in which they get the blind side. So I can see those two moving forward together. It seems like they would work together very well. That could very well be our final 2, Liz and Nina. It could very well. And the parallels we're seeing with Nina's game and her mother's game from the original Survivor Heroes vs. Villains it's pretty funny to see, to be honest. I think I saw somewhere on Twitter that both mother and daughter played idols at 10. That's crazy and strange, to say the least. Additionally, it seems like Nina's working with George. Yes, we haven't really seen a character quite like George being this upfront at tribal councils and stuff like that since we've seen like Russell Hantz. Russell Hantz was so polarizing. He played on the original Heroes vs. Villains season, and you know who was pretty much just work. I should rephrase this. Russell Hantz and Sandra pretty much weren't aligned, but she hid behind him pretty much the whole time, knowing that the jury did not like Russell, and you know it won her the game in the end. It really did. They did not like Russell. They did not like Parvati. I'm seeing the same thing possibly happening right now with Nina and George. Now, it might be the opposite, though. I think the jury really, really does like George, and they're respecting his game. But there's a lot of friends of Nina on the jury. There's a lot of friends. Yes, Sam, they're very close. Obviously, Sean, Flick, hell, maybe even Hayley now. Hayley probably respects that move. That's 4 people out of the 5 on the jury. That adds up quick, and you never know. She could very well win Australian Survivor Heroes vs. Villains like her mother did. I did predict that early on when we hit the merge, but I swayed away from it. But now I'm thinking that could be the case if the number 1 player I have ranked does not make it to the end. And yes, the player that I believe has the best chance of winning Australian Survivor Heroes vs. Villains is King George. Yes, George of Bankstown, King George of Bankstown. He's played He might, like I said at the top of this episode, he is probably the best Survivor player we've ever seen. I'm not sure how many times he's been on the wrong side of the vote. I really don't. It's been a while since I've watched Australian Survivor Brains vs. Bronze. That was my first season that I watched. And he put on a masterclass that season as well. Pretty much on the right side of every single vote. And this season, he's been on the right side of every single vote other than episode 18. It's just amazing to see. Where could he go wrong at this point? He has Liz and Nina on one side. He has Jerry and George on the other side. And then Simon's there. Simon's the lone wolf, the outcast. I don't see a scenario where George doesn't make it to the final three at this point. I really don't. He has his ducks in a row. He knows where everyone's going. He knows how everyone's thinking. And yeah, George is amazing. His gameplay needs to be lauded, applauded, and just revered for how stellar it's been, to be honest. So with that wraps up my episode rankings for who I think has the best chance to win. So just to recap, at number 1 with the highest chance of winning, George. 2, Nina. 3, Simon. 4, Liz. 5, Jerry. And 6, Matt. Hope you enjoyed this episode. This season's been a blast. If you've not already, check out our Survivor 44 content. Yes, we dropped our episode 2 recap the other day. Be sure to check that out, as we will be covering the rest of Survivor season 44 as the episodes are airing. And follow us on Twitter at PlayingVoodooPod. Make sure to drop a like and subscribe wherever you're listening, whether that be Spotify or YouTube. We really appreciate the support. And this turn of phrase that I usually say at the end of the episode, I will have to change a bit. Last episode, I gave my props to Hayley. This time around, I will not. This is Playing Voodoo, where split vote is not safe. Props to you, George.